This game has been played and it's being played by a select few on a constant basis. And they're cycling these $5 million checks, $15 million checks to a select crop of people that fit a profile in Silicon Valley, Stanford, etc.
Welcome back to It Starts Now, the happy hour finance and business. My name is Stan Lane, and once again, I have a very special guest. We're down in Miami. This is considered South Beach, right?
No,
What is
a
this
lot of
considered?
people would call it South Beach. So South
Right.
Beach has, if you talk to somebody who's down here, they would, especially on this side, they would say like, nah, South Beach is on the other. South Beach is an island,
Okay.
technically considered an island. It's got its own zip code. We're downtown Miami,
Ah,
but Miami is like the entire area. But there's South Beach, Miami, and then we're like downtown Miami.
okay.
But there's like a little rift between
You too?
between like, oh, we're not folks who are on South Beach versus we're folks who live in this other area.
Okay,
So
okay.
there's a short divide.
Yeah. Is it like a big rift? A
I
divided
mean,
rift?
I'm not part of the fight, but I think the perception is just that like South Beach has become very commercial, very
I
touristy.
see. I see.
This area is like new, up and coming, young professionals. A lot of entrepreneurs are in this area. What's more familiar with folks is what's considered like Brickell, which is right next door to where we are. So we're downtown, and there's Brickell, but most folks call this all like kind of like the Brickell zone, where it's a lot of young professionals, a lot of people who came from New York, moved down here, people from California. So yeah, no, this isn't South Beach.
All right, cool. So let's make a quick introduction. This is my guy, Sunga.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, no. So my name is Sungun Lamba. I am a licensed attorney. Began my career in Chicago, Illinois. Since left, went to Silicon Valley. We'll talk about that. Ended up in New York and balancing my time between Miami and New York, finding deals, which we'll talk about. Yeah, as
Yeah,
well. Yeah.
that's what's up, man. So let's talk about, let's jump into the Silicon Valley.
Yeah, let's talk about
So
it.
you went straight from law school, or how did
No,
that
that's
work?
a great question.
Okay.
So it's kind of how I ended up in Silicon Valley is like a step or a chapter in my story. Coming from Malawi, Africa, where I was born and raised, I had sort of this draw to somehow do deals or somehow impact the region. So when I started my career, it was actually in Chicago at a firm called Baker McKenzie, which was at the time the world's largest and highest grossing law firm. Had several locations in Africa, so I was doing cross-border deals. The challenge that I had while working at Baker McKenzie and doing those deals, which was great, was that I didn't think that I had much of an impact. They were very large, kind of slow moving financing projects, which is fine. It's great. But like I had like a little tick, right? I got to move fast. And the quicker, shorter deals outside of that space that I was doing at Baker McKenzie, which is considered like project finance, is this world called like venture capital. It's very quick. You get folks who are individuals who have a high net worth who can do a deal, or you have small groups. They're considered like venture capital firms that would write a check. And then the other end is like private equity folks that are doing venture capital deals. So I spent time in Silicon Valley as a way to sort of tool myself up to be able to do like quick deals that impact Africa.
When you started that, did you know this is the where you wanted to go? Like this is the direction.
No, that's a
Uh,
good question. So it was just a step that I saw to add tools to my toolkit. But I actually started in government.
I
So
didn't
when
know
I
that.
graduated,
Yeah.
when I graduated,
Mm.
the whole mindset of how do I have an impact back home, I ended up in New York at the United Nations, where I was doing work focused on Africa. Um, and then I got in that process, and though while an organization like the United Nations is what's the word, like valiant, I don't know. It's like it's very respectable space. I found that, like, I think again, like, things were very slow. I would go to meetings where people were sleeping, where a meeting would have a follow-up meeting to a follow-up meeting to present an action. So I kind of like pivoted from that to understanding like business is where it's at. If you want to make an impact, business moves fast and you generate income, you can grow economies. So if I wanted to impact Africa, my hometown of my home country of Malawi,
Mm.
I would need to pivot from government to understanding how to do deals and how to do deals fast. And that's how, sort of like, to advance my toolkit in that space, I ended up in Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
That's kind of like the crescent in the US of like where people are doing things very fast, um, and having huge impacts, right?
Yeah.
Like you get a unicorn that comes out of Silicon Valley, like a Uber, et cetera, like it's large scale.
Right.
It happens in sort of this space where things are moving fast and ideas are generating, people are sharing ideas. Um, but that was like very short lived. And then I pivoted out of that as well.
And then came to New York.
Then I came to New York.
All
Yeah.
right. And in New York, what were you doing?
So in New York, I do a mixture of things. So I still continue my practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then outside of that, I balance my time looking for deals where I'm focused on Africa focused founders or businesses. Um, it's kind of a unique time to be trying to look for deals, but they exist. But I've been doing New York ever since. Yeah.
Yeah. People don't realize how hard it is to be doing deal sourcing.
Yeah. Very hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, but I think someone like yourself who's interacting with people who are seeing different deal flows that are talking about different technologies, you're probably like one of the more equipped individuals out there, because I think that's what it takes, right? It's challenging, but it's having your ears open and understanding what nuggets you're picking up from different industries, different people in your day to day, what you see people are using, what technologies they find adaptable, because the very smart people get it wrong, right? Like there was a time where I guess you could call it the Silicon Valley folks were betting on wearables, which are like Apple watches, glasses that have technology built in them, but the customer didn't adopt those technologies. Self-driving vehicles has been a conversation for a long time that really smart people worked on those technologies, but the customers aren't really adopting it at the speed that they thought. They thought we would have drones, we thought we would have self-driving vehicles by now. So I say that to say it's challenging, but I think a lot of people can do it because you don't have to be super smart to get it done, right? You just have to be able to have a good hunch for how the world works and what people are adopting and what would make sense.
Yeah. In your opinion, what do you think is preventing people from adapting these early technologies?
That's a great question. I think that the folks who are building the technologies are completely out of touch. They're out of touch, which is fine. Like, when I moved from Malawi, Africa, to a small town in central Illinois called Champaign, Illinois. There's about 50,000 people in that area. It grows because it's a college campus, so it may grow like to 90 to 100,000 during the school year. Then it conflates back to 50,000. But I say that to say, like, the personalities that I interact with in that space, like, an interesting experience of mine was because, it's funny. I say all the time, like, I have immigrant moments where, like, I know I have these experiences, but I don't generally don't take a political stance. But in college, I was looking for an internship, and I found myself applying to different legislators' offices in Central Illinois, and found myself at a congressman's office where I was an intern there. But he was like one of the most conservative folks in the area, but I had no idea. But I'm just kind of segueing into his base and my experience and understanding like how people who are building the technologies are out of touch. There was a time where, so what was interesting about that experience is like my tone on the phone was similar to the legislator that I was working for. So a lot of people, when they called me, thought that they were talking to the legislator, and until I paused them. But anyway, there was this one experience where a woman called, and I'm not going to say the legislator's name, but she thought she was speaking to, let's just say, John. And then she was like, I was like, hello, so and so's office. And she was like, hey, John. She was like, why do we have to have this was during Barack's period. Why do we have to have a president named Barack Obama? He's a Muslim. But then anyway, in her rant, which was very short before I cut her off, she says, like, we're in an area where we only have phones. Like, we don't care about computers. She said this verbatim. Like, we don't care about computers. So I think there are people who are trying to build the future of tomorrow who don't know about, that these people exist, and they're completely comfortable and they're okay. And it's fine, the lifestyle that they choose and the ideas that they believe. But this is a large segment of America that we saw was captured in a recent election by Trump, right? Because he understood that these people exist. They're comfortable with their lives, their ideals. So I think those people aren't interested in Google glasses that have that you can see, like, where it translates someone speaking in a different language, a wearable device that says stand up, they're comfortable. Or a self-driving vehicle, because that involves trust, and you're talking about people generationally who have been driving trucks and their vehicles. So I think until there's a time where, I guess you call them Silicon Valley or the tech elites, are able to connect with those folks,
or migrate into different areas,
there's still going to be a huge disconnect in what they build and what a huge segment of, I guess we're talking about like America, obviously, but like, you don't want to keep it too small. Like, there's the whole Western world, but like until they connect, then that's going to be a challenge. They're not worried about ChatGPT over there.
Nah. Yeah. They might not even have a laptop or a computer.
No, they did. We don't even have a computer. I think she said there was like one computer in the entire neighborhood. And they just have phones, and they don't want a president whose name is Barack Obama.
What you just said just blew my mind, because I didn't even think of it that way. And to your point, I don't even think even us that have these type of devices are aware that these people exist and content in their environment and content in where they at in life. So to me, that's very interesting. Somebody that's probably just locked into their normal routine of just going home, going to work. They don't care about much.
Oh, they don't care. You drive a Porsche by, they just be like, that guy's some city slicker, But I like going home. It's I wouldn't say it's like humbling, but it feels like home. So I think these people are living very real lives, and I think there's just that disconnect.
Yeah.
The speed of technology versus the speed of their lives. That's my theory.
No, definitely.
That's my theory. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about, what's going on now, in terms of, we were talking about it on the way here into the room. The idea that the conversation has shifted from, let's say, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when the entrepreneurs were talking about, there was money that was flowing. There was so much cap on the table, right? And now the conversation is crickets.
Oh, it's very crickets, yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
No, it's very interesting. So I've been coming to Miami, spending time in New York with an understanding that this was the area where the next tech revolution is going to happen. This is like the next Silicon Valley area, including like Austin as well as, I think, like pockets of Utah saw the same migration of folks that were really smart, and they had the stay-at-home jobs, and with all the money flowing, they also became entrepreneurs in these new areas. So Austin saw uptick, Miami saw uptick. Like 2 years ago, everybody was like, I'm a founder. Like, you would go to a happy hour where you're looking for deals. Everybody is a founder in Web3, Everybody is the founder of a crypto exchange. Everybody's doing an NFT project that you can invest in. And you fast forward from then to now, and it's almost crickets in how I view sort of the landscape of that style of entrepreneur that we were seeing pop up uh, a lot everywhere. And we talked about, I was like, all the boats and the Ferraris is kind of gone. And I guess some people call them like crypto boys. It's been extremely quiet. I saw an article that was published by a Miami news publication that sort of was talking about like how club owners are nervous, right? Like they were selling $50,000 bottles and experiences at these clubs. I don't know. We'll decide if we want to clip it or not. But I was having a conversation with this founder of an NFT project where she was joking about. Well, she wasn't. She was joking in her telling the story, but it was a true story where she rented out a extremely popular strip club in Miami, and for her company, and they had brought in several strippers, including I don't know what the correct term is, like dwarfs. And they were like tossing around like Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
So like the mentality of just like free throwing money and tossing it around in that fashion is gone now. And it's interesting, like the same folks that were talking about being founders in those experiences, I think they're switching now to things that have value and focusing on projects that can guarantee at least some level of success, which as an investor, you're excited to see that, because when those projects were popping up, when everybody was a founder of everything crypto, NFT, like that money was just, everybody was just betting. There was just so much money being pumped in the economy. Everybody, I was betting. Like everybody was just betting on what they thought would be the next pump, because that's what we were experiencing, just pumps everywhere. A lot of that is gone. Yeah. No, but it's wild. It's a true story. Like she really Club 11, and that's one of the most popular clubs, period, in Miami. You rent out that huge space that has so many floors, and she's making that money off of NFT, an NFT platform, which is like a digitized asset, which at the time wasn't even proven. Like she was idea stage, and then we can talk about like what that means, being funded at the idea stage versus like a seed stage where you actually have proven that you're acquiring customers. Like it's completely different. Like you're getting huge checks by saying, I think I can make some money. Here's my PowerPoint.
Yeah. So two things I want to ask you is like, before we go into how has that impacted you to starting your fund, right? But let's talk about the ideal stage.
Yeah.
You want to dive into that?
Yeah. So the investor's journey or the entrepreneur's journey who is looking for private capital, which is the way that I look at it, is it's the opposite of being able to go get a loan from a bank. You go to a friend to get a check, or you go to a group of people to get a check. That's private investment in my view. And a lot of people are familiar with private equity, which is like the BlackRocks of the world, who are buying companies, improving their systems, and then selling it for a profit, right? Because the private investor is always looking for a profit. But I think what we were talking about before is like, at the time where everybody had this FOMO, right? Fear of being missed out, and checks were being cut, there are people who are getting funded at the idea stage, which happens, right? It absolutely happens, where you meet someone who, like, for example, if I were betting on somebody at the idea stage, if I had to, but I generally don't do that. Like, they're double Harvard or Stanford, they've got the right connections, they've got the right advisors, and they've had an exit before, or they've been successful in other spaces, and they say like, okay, I have this new idea and I'm bootstrapped in other places. Bootstrap meaning like I've spent my own money, or I've got enough friends' checks and I've spent all that I can't fund this new idea. So what we were talking about is like, when there was all this free flow of money and this FOMO during like this COVID period where everybody was just getting funding, like people were getting their ideas funded like crazy, right?
Mm.
Like, and that's just having presenting a PowerPoint and saying like, this is what I anticipate to be the outcome of your investment.
Mm-hmm.
I have a group of close friends, and it's no knock to them, very smart people, MD, so they're medical doctors and everything, and they had like an idea in the tech space, and they got a $5 million check, right? And I think ultimately, like that's what's fascinating about like what I'm doing in the space that I'm stepping in, and I'm saying like this game has been played, and it's being played by a select few
Mm-hmm.
on a constant basis, and
Mm-hmm.
they're cycling these $5 million checks, $15 million checks to a select crop of people that fit a profile in Silicon Valley, Stanford, alum, et cetera. And there's no knock to them, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to place a bet, um, you've done the
Ideally,
numbers.
right.
Ideally, right? It kind of makes sense, right? If
Mm.
you got to cut a check, you're looking for a return. Um, but there are a lot of people who missed out, right? And I'm focused on African markets, and there are the next Jeff Bezos of the world that exist in these locations in Africa who don't have access to idea stage $5 million checks, right?
Right.
I'm from Malawi, and there was a movie on Netflix where everybody sort of got exposure to this, and it's about, I think it's called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a village, a young villager who built not a solar, built a wind um, large fan that
Like a
generates,
windmill.
yeah,
Yeah.
windmill for without access to reliable internet and everything. And if you see the structure, it's like buckets with a fan, and so that concept of there's a entrepreneur, the next Jeff Bezos in Africa, who just needs access to capital is exciting for me, and it's what we're going after. Um, every time I go home, you see innovation, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
even I was thinking about it yesterday. As a boy growing up, all of the toys we played with, we made,
Yeah.
right? So that's innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Soccer balls, we use newspaper and plastic bags to build soccer balls, right? We're going outside and we're making like these little toys that make noises where you have like a mango seed and you put a thread to it and you put two sticks at the end and you wind it up, and then when you spin it, it makes like this cool sound, right? That's innovation. Going outside and using it, making a bow and arrow, right? It seems primitive, but it's very advanced,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm excited about those folks getting an opportunity to have access to funding for their ideas because it's a huge opportunity.
It's a huge market.
It's a huge market,
Yeah.
right? We're talking about like what we're seeing uh, in the Western world or in the U.S. from the investors and the technologies that are coming up. Like, and I think people are missing the boat on Africa. And what I see and what's fascinating to me is like I'm seeing more non-Africans on planes going to Africa than I'm seeing Africans, right? Like, and it's no, not to stereotype folks, because I think a lot of people know the demographic of people who right now are predominantly investing in certain regions in Africa. But there was a time when I was going to Malawi where I was like, 70-80% of the plane is Chinese on a consistent basis, and it's still almost like that
Mm-hmm.
because they're starting lives and investing. Because I think there are people who understand, who've done the numbers, who are willing to bet. I'm one of those people who's excited about the opportunity. Um, it's going to be good. It's next up.
Yeah. I think that during the time of, I think it was like towards the tail end of 2020, like probably 2021, I think they were talking about Twitter was trying to make a move, or Jack Dorsey was trying to make a move over there to Africa. There's a lot of people trying to go into Africa, and companies too, because of the huge market, right?
Exactly.
You could tap into a lot of different people that's doing different things, right? They even had this own version of delivery service, own version of like Amazon type of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
and what's fascinating about you mentioning that is it kind of ties to your question around why aren't people adopting the technology? It's a cultural divide, right?
Hmm.
I come from a small country, Malawi, where there's like 24 dialects, right? That means there's about 24 different people that speak their have their own communication, their own culture. And if you go into a space and you think that they can adopt an idea without understanding the people, you're placing losing bets. So I think that a lot of people to date, they understand the opportunity. um, but the advantage that we have is we're working with folks that are boots on the ground, that we're also surveying the non typical market factors when doing a deal. And less looking at like GDP and all that other stuff. It's like understanding, like a pure case example, is simple one to understand is like in Malawi, the success of your business is largely tied to whether you're of the same tribe to the political power, right?
Mm. I
So,
didn't know that.
like, if you're not a Republican or if you're not a Democrat at this time, your business is going to suffer, right? Like, to even understand, you like a lot of people can't even comprehend that in a free democracy. Well, Malawi's a democracy as well, but like a lot of people don't even understand that, right?
Right,
So,
right, right.
it's an interesting time to be an investor in Africa. It's an exciting time. There's a lot of opportunity.
What's the besides the market and besides the innovation, things like that, right? What's the benefit of being in the States and then investing in a place like Africa, where you don't
Yeah.
have, like you don't have, like I could invest capital, but if I wanted to follow up and build something there,
Yeah.
like what's the advantage that, what's the benefit of building something there
Yeah.
that that you can actually scale a type of business?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I think the first thing for me is like the returns. The idea is that you would like 2x here, like 4x, 5x in Africa, just based on demand and scarcity of resources. Um, and then there's two is like access, right? You build a resort that becomes your vacation home. And I think for a lot of people, it just takes confidence to go and experience it. You know, my father, who's a huge proponent of African markets, always tells me like the same places that you see and you marvel in Europe exist in Africa, and it really does, right? There are places in Africa where you go where you like, am I in
Where
south
are
of
you?
Spain? You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's the exact. It
Yeah.
looks the same. I think a lot of people just don't know that. So I would say like two primary benefits are, you know, the returns are better in my view, and then also access. It just creates a new opportunity for you to access a new market and enjoy a great lifestyle. Be treated like a king.
Yeah. You
Very,
can't
very
deny
easy.
that.
Oh, you be treated like a
Yeah.
king. So your dollar goes far in some
in
places in
in some
Africa.
places in
Yeah, for sure.
Africa. And then you said there's a 26 dialects or 27
About
dialects?
24 in Malawi. Yeah,
24.
in one
And just
small
one
country.
small
That's
country.
one country. So you
Right.
can, and then you know you also have to realize that, you know, we're talking about the culture is Africa was divided by people who were not African, right?
Hmm.
So the margins that you see in the people that a lot of people don't even understand. You know, it's interesting when I go to when I go home. My father, I consider him like a historian. Like when you're
Hmm.
driving, he knows facts about so many things. So it's fascinating to see the things that he talks about. And there's a road. Well, there's several roads that border two different countries. On one side it's Malawi, one side it's Mozambique, and in other areas it like might be Malawi, Zambia, depending on what side of the country you're on. But he's like he always says like these people marry it, you know, across because it's just a road that
Hmm.
divides. These people marry, they trade, they have stores here, homes here, but they don't know like I'm Malawian, I'm from Mozambique. So culturally, not only are there like 24 dialects, like that's what we can put a number on. There's still this huge flow in and out of people who are bringing their own ideas, etc., who don't understand like the boundaries. So it's more mixed up than that, and it
Hmm.
can be more of a complicated pool. So I think for investors, it's important to really understand that culture
Or partner with someone like you.
Partner with somebody like me in the operation that we're working on, so that you can be certain that folks are double checking factors that the common investor in the Western, more developed economy aren't checking or are not able to check.
All right. And your primary focus or your hyper focus into the tech area.
Uh, yes, I would say that. So there's three focuses. There's clean tech, fintech, and pharma. Clean tech, that's clean energy, solar, wind farms. You see, like waterfalls can create energy. So, there are people who are using waste to create energy. So so that is tech based. Fintech, financial technologies. A lot of that is like money movement. What's big in Africa right now is anything that you can do through mobile currency, doing money transfers through mobile, right? Everyone's got a phone. So, which is what goes into like when you're understanding like the market economy, the African economy, you have to understand like how are people accessing your technology, right? They're using a phone, not a desktop. So when people bring ideas that work better on desktops, or you're showing me like a streaming service, I'm like, well, you're talking to somebody, you're selling to somebody who's using a flip phone, right? When I was a boy growing up in Malawi, to watch like movies and stuff, you would have to go into the market, into like somebody who set up a booth. You're not watching TV at home, right? So that's your access to streaming services. And then pharma, which is broader. It can be physical, it could be technology or not, but medical devices, research in products that fight common diseases in Africa, we're focused on as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And how? Because I know Bill Gates is trying to go into that market.
Yeah. Bill Gates has his own. They have their own perception of Bill Gates there, especially since COVID, which is fascinating. Yeah. The last time I was there, folks kind of thought he created he created COVID and the vaccine. But yeah, there are people who are. Warren Buffett is in the Rwanda area. I'm close with someone who supports some of his projects there. I think it's run primarily by his son, who does a lot of philanthropic stuff for the Buffett Foundation. You mentioned Twitter, Jack Dorsey. He's super hyper focused on Africa, not only for like what he built in Twitter, but he's looking at solutions that work there. There are a ton of folks who are trying to invest, particularly also in Ghana. We're seeing a lot of Black Americans that are investing in Western Africa. Western Africa has done a great job, in my opinion, in creating a pathway for folks to go there. So like you can get a citizenship if you're someone in the diaspora, which means like you're somebody that's like outside of the Africa region, but of African descent. Those programs also exist that a lot of people aren't aware of, where you can get a citizenship in an African country. Like those programs have been built. I think they're not marketed in a way that
underutilized.
Or underutilized, yes.
Yeah. So if I'm somebody that want to go out there and invest, where would you say for somebody that's starting out would be able to get the best advantage? Where could I leverage my startup?
That's a great question. I would say in a highly populated area that has young folks that are building technologies that support what you're working. So there's a tech ecosystem. Areas that come to mind are like Lagos. It's a really attractive area of young, capable, smart professionals who are building ecosystems that support tech. Rwanda has become known to some folks in that space as like the Silicon Valley of Africa. They've done a really good job at building tech, entrepreneurship locally. Kenya's got pockets. Nairobi is another area where you can definitely get bang for your buck if you're investing in technology. And then obviously like South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, like the typical well-performing African countries are throwing that pocket. But I would say the excitement right now is Nigeria, Rwanda, and Kenya for sure. Yeah, that's where there's a lot of buzz.
And that's where you put your focus on.
We've got connections in those areas, right? So that's a great question, because like you could say Africa, but that's that's complicated, right? We're talking about 24 dialects. Like now, imagine the entire Africa. So yes, we are super hyper focused on those areas as well. Um, like for example, I got a deal that I really liked through a francophone country, which means that country speaks predominantly French. I don't speak French, and I have respect for the fact that that culture is going to be completely different than what I can understand. Um, just based on the divide of my, what I'm aware of in terms of just like, how I was raised and how those folks come up. So I had to pass on that deal because culturally I couldn't connect. But I thought the deal made sense. Um, but I think that that sort of goes to your question about like where are you focused and how do you think about things? Like if someone's solving an issue that they understand, which is great, and I don't understand the issue or the problem that they're trying to solve, I don't think I should be investing, and I don't think investors should be thinking that way either.
Yeah, that's facts.
Yeah.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah.
Listen, man, this has been awesome. Please let them know where they can reach you at, man.
You can reach me at various places. Stratford Venture Partners is the investment firm that I'm talking about that is hyper focused on Africa focused founders or people who are outside of Africa that are focused on investing in Africa. Sungun Lamba on LinkedIn. It's a great way to reach me. I also run an apparel business, Zim Rothschild. There's some details there on how you can reach me as well.
Yeah, now, my final question before we even end this, because as you know, this show it starts now.
Yeah, it starts now.
Yeah.
You called me last minute. I'm like, oh, I completely forgot about this. It starts now.
It starts now, bro. It starts now.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that's watching that might be, young and probably, need some kind of inspiration. May not need that inspiration, but may need some type of advice or something that you can share to get people started or get people, motivated into doing the thing that they would like to pursue.
Yeah.
So if you had like one or two things that you would like to share that can have some impact.
I don't know if this is one I look back and see if we'll cut it from the from the reel, but I had it. I would say the advice and then sort of a quick story. The advice is like use your resources and your skill set to get to who you want or to get to where you want. You don't have to emulate what you think is the prototype to get there. And the story behind that is in college, I played football, right? I wasn't a successful athlete, but I played football. And in order to train for the football season, there was a decathlete who lived above me who would essentially train me. And the reason why I trained with him is like I played cornerback and you got to be like the best athlete on the field. And a decathlete, he's doing, I think the reason why it's like DECA is like 10 events on the track and field, long jump. So they're like the best all around athletes. But anyway, every time I would go train with him, I would see like his roommate who was a very studious economics and accounting major. And he was like always
strictly academics.
Strictly. So then I would poke in and just kind of talk to him. And then like he would, kind of give me like small nuggets on what he was working on. But I was just super fascinated every time I saw him. And then one opportunity out of happenstance is I found out like he had invested in Tesla and got like a crazy return. So I found that to be really fascinating. And we started talking about the markets. But then I was like, what's my opportunity to kind of like be cool with this guy? So then I would offer him like football incentives, but he wasn't really biting. And then and I guess like to the part that we might decide to cut out is he was a big smoker. So then I would like offer him like, hey, do you want, but like I wouldn't partake, but just like, hey, I can give you access, whatever. In exchange, if you teach me what you know about the markets. So he ended up giving me advice about like, I started my first trading account with him. He introduced me to the venture capital space, became a mentor. And that was somebody who I wanted, but like, I felt like he was completely different than my lifestyle. Like he played golf on Saturdays. He tucked his shirt in. You know what I mean? Like he tucked his shirt in to go to class. Like he was somebody who was like in a different, complete stratosphere that I can connect. But I used my resources. It turns out like
You
sports,
leveraged it.
I leveraged it, and then also like I played sports in the town I grew up with, so I was able to kind of like mobilize a network to sort of create incentives that he would give me information. So folks who are interested in getting into a space like investment, use your traits or use your unique story to sell that to somebody. And if someone says no, that's completely fine. Like they've done you a benefit, because now you don't have to waste your time trying to sell to somebody who's not interested, for sure. So I would say definitely use your resources. And then I guess, grind and treat every experience like it's an interview, and everyone who asks for your service as a customer. And that's a big one that I had to learn recently, particularly as an entrepreneur, because you think like it's going to be easy. A lot of people do it because they don't want to have a boss, but you're going to have to answer to somebody, and those are usually your customers. So treating your customer as your boss, treating every new opportunity as an interview, making sure that you're somewhat prepared, making sure that you follow up, making sure that that person has the best impression of you on the first go round goes a long way, because what happens is like when you want to do something and you don't have a lot of value to bring to somebody may not give you an opportunity at that moment, but it's somewhat in the back of their mind. And if you present as somebody that they can put in front of an opportunity, and whether you fail or you don't, like they still are okay with like betting on you, that's the best case scenario. And if you go into a situation where you're not really treating it as an interview, or you don't treat it as like that individual as like one of your best customers, you lose that opportunity. And that's like a mistake that I think a lot of people make, not being as responsive, not being professional when they approach, not corresponding. I mean, and it's completely okay, right? Like it's a learning experience for a lot of people. And when you learn it, it doesn't really matter. You can learn it later in life or you can learn it early in life. But I think it's something that it's a piece of advice that I had to learn recently. So I would like to share it as well. Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
For sure, brother. Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
We'll probably cut that out too. I'm just gonna watch it. I'm like, it's going to end up 5 minutes. I'm like, oh man, I said that.
Nah, it's all good, brother.
Yeah. No, but it is a true story. It was this white kid